Today on Day of Discovery, In His Footsteps with Jim Cantelon.
Being pregnant on the back of the donkey in the rain on December 24th is not in the gospel.
Oh, that's right.
That's an image that we get from church art or films, but that is not the story Luke wants us to hear.
No.
And I think we owe it to Luke to hear his story.
There were still thieves to deal with. There were still unexpected bumps along the way, but Joseph and Mary made it. Hi, friends. Welcome to In His Footsteps with Day of Discovery. I'm Jim Cantelon. I'm standing out in the broiling heat of the Judean wilderness. Behind me is the road to Bethlehem from Nazareth in the north. We're speculating this may have been one of the chosen routes of Joseph and Mary when they left Bethlehem, and she was 9 months pregnant, and rode and walked with that donkey all the way to Bethlehem. An arduous trek, to be sure. So this is going to be a fascinating little insight, and Dr. Claire Pfann is going to be joining me after my Bible teaching, giving her perspective as an historian and as a university professor on all of this. I'll tell you, by the time it comes Christmas, this is going to add a three-dimensional aspect to your appreciation for the heroic journey that Joseph and Mary made. So you hang in, be back with the teaching right after this. Luke chapter 2, verse 1, it came to pass in those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This census took place while Quirinius was governing Syria. So all went to be registered, everyone to his own city. Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed wife, who was with child. Well, we've read that before. You've read it many times. Perhaps if you attend church, you've heard it preached on. Maybe never have you ever heard it expressed coming from quite a setting like this. We're in the desert, the Judean wilderness. We're in this unbelievably hot, arid, almost hostile environment. I won't say it's completely hostile because there are people who do live in the desert. But when we're talking about Joseph and his young pregnant wife hopping on a donkey, he would walk, she would be on the donkey, all the way from Nazareth to Bethlehem, we're talking about an arduous trek. Now, they had two options. One was to go down to the Jordan Valley, which is a part of the Syro-African rift that goes from just about the lower Galilee all the way down to the Dead Sea, and then, of course, beyond into Africa. But they could go down to the east side of the Jordan River, which runs down the bottom of that rift valley, and they could walk along that eastern shore of Jordan River. And this often was the preferred route because even though it was hot, there were quite a few springs along the way. And, you know, where there's springs, there's trees. Where there's trees, there's shade. And often there is shelter. And people would stop and erect a tent or whatever, or sleep under the stars and carry on. And then when they got to the area of Jericho, they would then start walking up through these very hills that I'm standing in right now, the Judean wilderness, this completely arid ecological atmosphere. The other option they had was to stay to the west of the Jordan River and the Rift Valley and to come down through Samaria. Now, this would be also fairly hilly. It wouldn't be quite as arid as this, but there were a lot of opportunities for thieves along the way, because they're not talking a super highway here. They're talking a donkey path, or in some cases goat paths, and it's, you know, uphill, downhill, into little valleys called wadis, around corners, lots of places for these people to hide and then spring out and rob, just kind of like the story of the Good Samaritan. Commentators aren't sure. I mean, nobody knows. The Bible doesn't say which route they took. I think the inclination of most is that they chose to come by way of the Jezreel Valley and then through Samaria and down to Bethlehem, south of Jerusalem. And I'm inclined to think that probably is the route they took too. However, they had two options. But if indeed they came along the eastern side of the Jordan River, down to Jericho, and then up to Jerusalem and Bethlehem, it was through an arid wilderness just like this. I need to help you understand just how challenging this kind of atmosphere can be. For 7 years, I planted and pastored King of Kings Church in Jerusalem, Israel. We raised our children here in Israel, and I also used to broadcast in southern Lebanon. So once a week, I would drive up to southern Lebanon. I also ran a special program for North American young people who came over and lived and worked as volunteers on the various kibbutzim of Israel. And so I would have 2 or 3 kibbutzes, or kibbutzim, that I would visit once a week as well and do a Bible study with these kids. So occasionally, my wife and my 3 little children would come with me. One time we were driving up the Jordan Valley, this very valley I was just talking about, and it was so hot that we put the windows up. Now, these were the days when it was very uncommon in Israel for any car to have air conditioning. It's now law in Israel, but at the time we were living here, it wasn't. Very expensive as an aftermarket thing, and we were on a budget. And so we had a little Volkswagen, 3 kids, no air conditioning. So hot, we kept the windows up, because if we opened the windows, the heat coming in was just like a blistering oven. We had been warned about this. We'd been told that people were known to have hallucinations because of the constant heat. And frankly, I was getting pretty close to it, I think. When we finally got to the Sea of Galilee, we pulled off the road right up to the shore, and my wife and my 3 kids and I got out of the car and ran into the lake fully clothed. We were so desperate for some cool and for some water. And this was not a lark. This was desperation. I can't imagine what it would have been like for Joseph and Mary to have put up with this kind of thing over the course of, I would say 4 to 6 days it would take them from Nazareth to Bethlehem, just walking. I can't imagine what it was like. And I can't imagine the kind of patience and fortitude that both of these people showed, especially young Mary. Now, there had to be times when she would get off the donkey because, you know, a donkey's gait is pretty jarring, and she's, you know, 9 months pregnant. One of the most difficult things, I think, for a woman to do is to be constantly jostled and jarred when she is ready to give birth. And so probably some of the time she was walking too. Well, when you're walking through this kind of wilderness, you're wearing sandals, the dust is coming up, it's in your nostrils, it's in your clothing, it's in your feet. You're constantly dehydrated, you're looking for water, you need water, and quite likely they carried water with them. Now, the interesting thing about carrying water with you, and I know this because we had bottles of water in our car on that occasion when I was telling you we were driving up the Jordan Valley. You take that bottle of water and it is hot. It's almost as hot as the water coming out of your hot water tap, simply because it's the temperature of the air. 40 degrees Celsius, maybe 105, 106 degrees Fahrenheit, sometimes 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, that's pretty hot water. So, you know, you need some water from the donkey, you're going to get hot water. There were still thieves to deal with. There were still unexpected bumps along the way. But Joseph and Mary made it. And I am so impressed as I think about it of how Joseph and Mary managed to do this. Now, there's one thing I haven't mentioned. It's very possible, now there's no mention of this, but it's possible that there may have been other people in Nazareth who also had a home base in Bethlehem. That's possible. And for sure, if there were, then they would have got together and they would have traveled together. In most cases, that's what you wanted to do. You did not want to travel just as a lonely person or a couple. If you could have, you know, 3 other couples or just a small community of co-travelers, it not only provided the kind of comfort of the group, but it also provided protection against thieves. And it gave opportunity when you were in trouble to say, hey, I've run out of water, can you share some with me? Whatever happened, friends, it happened. And Joseph and Mary made it to Bethlehem. And we know how the story unfolds from there. Coming up after this short break, I'm I'll be joined with Dr. Claire Pfann. She is a university professor. She's an historian. She is very well versed in all of this I've been talking about, and we'll get a perspective from her that only she can give. So you hang in with me. I'll be back with Claire Pfann right after this.
And now we return to In His Footsteps with Jim Cantelon on Day of Discovery.
Here I am. This is a beautiful early evening in Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, inside the old city gate, old city walls, and right near the Temple Mount, central shrine of the Jewish faith. And I'm sitting here with Professor Claire Pfann from the University of the Holy Land, and we're having a casual conversation. Those who've been watching the show for the last few weeks, you know how interesting Claire Pfann is. Claire, let's go back to the pregnant Mary.
Mm-hmm.
She's pretty close to birth time. Joseph is going to take her to Bethlehem. There's a census that's going on. I know there's been some controversy about this census. What do you know about this census that would call a guy from Nazareth back to his, purportedly, I guess his family home, Bethlehem?
Yes, a family home, definitely.
Yeah.
The particular procurator that Luke mentions as Quirinius.
Right.
Our only difficulty is what year did this actually happen?
Yeah.
And Luke alone of our four gospel writers really makes an effort to plug us into imperial history,
Right.
talking about Tiberius in chapter 3 and the sacred history of the temple, who's the high priest, and also Jewish history in terms of who is the procurator, or not the procurator, but who is the ethnarch of the Galilee, Herod Antipas.
Right.
So he gives us these dates, and the date of this specific Quirinius may have been in 6 CE, so we don't know if it's really Quirinius's census or a census that might have been taken earlier. But the Romans are imperial power, and they want to know where people are, how many people there are, and they charge taxes. And of course, nobody likes the tax man, and taxes are a big sore point in the Gospels as well.
Yeah.
So they definitely, though, are not the only people on the move. I would assume that if Joseph and Mary are affected, there are many people who are affected.
Yeah.
And I think that really leads us into the scene that we see in Luke chapter 2.
And do you think when they made this trip, and it would be an arduous trip from Nazareth to Bethlehem, they would just do it on their own, or would they caravan up with others who were going that way?
Yes, I think that travel from Galilee to Judea was usually always done in groups.
Yeah.
The most popular common route would be to go along the King's Highway on the eastern side of the Jordan River, because it's primarily flat. You have access to fresh water.
Yeah.
And if you travel in a group, you can come up through Jericho, which is an enormous oasis that's had water available for thousands of years, and make your way down to Bethlehem from there. But it's a few weeks.
Yeah, and the I did it just the other day. The climb from Jericho up to Jerusalem and Bethlehem is extremely arduous. I mean, even for a car, that engine is just working like crazy. Jericho, Dead Sea, lowest spot on earth, right?
That's right. That's right.
So it'd be a climb of what? How many? Who knows how many feet? Or about
Yes.
We're about 3,000 feet above sea level here. And the Dead Sea is 1,500 feet below sea level.
Right, exactly.
So it's at least 4,500 feet.
Yeah, it's a hard one on the lungs, that's for sure.
No kidding. So you figure that King's Highway would be the route. What about the route through Samaria? Was that a potential, like to come down that way?
I mean, we hear it reflected occasionally that they go through Samaria on their way, and you could go up through the Central Highlands and find your way to Nazareth as well, because Nazareth is not on the Sea of Galilee.
No.
So we're coming from Nazareth to Bethlehem, but it's in Western Galilee, so that makes you more central in the geographical region. So it's a possibility, certainly.
Now, the typical view we have from our Christmas pageants is, Donkey Daniel, as my kids used to call him, this faithful donkey plugging away with this very pregnant, beautiful young woman on its back. I've often thought if there is a pregnancy involved, the last place a woman would want to be is on the back of a donkey. I mean, it would be one of the roughest rides going. It's quite likely that she probably walked.
Yes, she probably walked, and being pregnant on the back of the donkey in the rain on December 24th is not in the gospel.
Oh, that's right.
That's an image that we get from Proto-Evangelium of James, so one of the New Testament Apocrypha, or from church art or films, but that is not the story Luke wants us to hear.
No.
And I think we owe it to Luke to hear his story.
So what is Luke's story, as you recall?
Yes, well, Luke says there's the census. The census is the catalyst for this movement of peoples to go back to their ancestral home. Well, you picked that up right away, that they're going back to a place that Joseph's family is from. And Bethlehem is a small village. It's not a city like Jericho, where you would have hotels. It's not a city like Jerusalem with thousands of people. It's a small village organized around extended patriarchal families. So they're coming to a place where they probably have relatives. And as in all good familial relations and in Jewish homes, you offer hospitality to people who come in.
Right.
We have no scene of Joseph going from door to door, knocking on doors and asking anyone to let him in. In fact, Luke says, while they were there, the time came for her to be delivered.
Right.
She is already in Bethlehem, staying somewhere when she goes into labor.
Right.
So they have accommodations. Then he continues, she gave birth to her firstborn child, wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger. Well, giving birth to the firstborn child and wrapping him in swaddling clothes, that's normal.
Yeah.
Using a manger for a crib is unusual.
Yeah.
But the manger has a function to play within the story. And we have to remember, they are not at home when they give birth to this baby. They may have a crib in Nazareth, but they didn't bring it with them down the southerly trip. In fact, when I had our firstborn son, Steve Jr., we were house sitting for you and Kathy.
That's right.
And I took a drawer out of the dresser and I put a pillow in it and covered it with a sheet. And Steve Jr. slept in a drawer from your guys' dresser for the first 2 months of his life until you came back from furlough, because my crib was on Mount Scopus and not in the German colony. Ergo, the manger is partly because they are guests in a home, and also it serves as the sign to the shepherds. How will they know which baby born that night in Bethlehem is the baby? It's the baby whose crib is a manger. But the thing that has confused everybody is that it says they laid him in a manger because there was no room in the, and then we have the word in English quite often, but the word is really kataluma in Greek, and that word means the guest room or the upper room. So what we see as Luke describes it is Joseph and Mary at their ancestral home for a period of time, giving birth, using a manger for a crib. And where would the manger be located? Probably in the basement cave where you store wine and wheat and where you can keep precious animals. And she has the baby down there because it's private. There's no room in the guest room. They're not the only people who are there. And for reasons of ritual purity, there's going to be shedding of blood with the birth of a child. And so you can have the birth there and none of the rest of the house is affected by it. And then it's all good. There's joy and rejoicing. The shepherds rejoice. The angels break forth with song. They have a circumcision party. Who comes to that party? Well, the ladies of the family, the men of the family, you know, the extended relatives of Joseph. Luke wants us to hear how happy this story is. And he also knows how to call a hotel a hotel. In the story of the Good Samaritan, when the Good Samaritan takes the injured man down to Jericho, he checks him into a hotel. And that word is the Greek word pundakeon. In modern Hebrew, we say a pundak for an inn or a tavern. He checks him into a hotel, but he doesn't use kataluma. The other place where he uses the word kataluma is when Jesus says to his disciples, go into Jerusalem and ask the owner, where is the guest room that I can have the meal with my disciples? And no one ever says, ask him where's the inn.
No.
So we have to get rid of this idea of Bethlehem being a big urban city with a Hotel 6 in Hilton. Doesn't have it.
No.
And that hospitality is there, that Jesus is born into a community of Jews who are waiting for the promises of the Lord to be fulfilled, and there is joy and rejoicing, and he is embraced within that community.
This angelic announcement in the shepherd's fields intrigues me. I wish I'd been there. These guys must have been totally shocked. I mean, they're out there, they probably have a little watchfire going, the sheep maybe in one of the caves protecting them from the weather and wild animals and what have you. And they're just minding their own business, and suddenly, boom, there's this huge flood of music, and the sky lights up with lights, and angels appear and speak to them. What a moment.
Yes.
And the fact that they were able then, after the excitement, to rush into town and find the baby in the manger amazes me, because there must have been an awful lot of people there.
Yes, and I mean, how do you go and ask around
Yeah,
to
you
find
say,
a baby?
hello, you got a baby? You got a baby? You got a baby? Yeah,
Yes.
amazing. You mentioned the Cataluma, which I think is a very important point to make. This helps those of us who are, Bible readers to appreciate what is said in another gospel about the wise men coming to the house where the young child was.
Yes.
And Herod, after hearing about the birth of the King of the Jews, understands this kid's got to be 2 years or younger, and so orders the death of all 2-year-olds and under, right?
Yes, yes. They stay in Bethlehem for an extended period.
Which tells us they stayed in Bethlehem for an extended period of
That's right.
time.
That's right.
The Magi, we 3 kings of Orient are,
Or maybe even more kings.
like we several kings of Orient are.
Yeah, no specific number, but 3 gifts.
3 gifts.
3 gifts. That's why we say 3
And
gifts.
any significance of the gifts?
Well, I like to think about Matthew as actually the gospel that speaks to crisis, to refugee status. It is the gospel in which Joseph and Mary and Jesus must flee in the middle of the night with only what they can carry, because crazy political powers want to destroy innocent people. They have no power against a mad king like Herod. But what they do have is frankincense, gold, and myrrh, things that are transportable. He has a profession that is movable, that can go from one country to another. He can find refuge in Egypt, like his forebears, and in the middle of the night takes the family. They experience loss, and they experience what it means to be dehumanized before crazy kings. And so when we look for a gospel that speaks to refugees, speaks to people who have had to flee, who speaks to people who are imminent victims of terror, it's the Gospel of Matthew that shows God's faithfulness and provision.
Isn't that powerful? And we read it, went to Egypt. That would be a trip that would be 5 times more difficult than the trip from Nazareth to Bethlehem, maybe 10 times more difficult. Again, probably in a group of travelers. I would think so.
I would think they.
Although he left in the middle of the night, probably took him a while to, join up with a group.
Yeah.
There was quite a diaspora, right? Quite a dispersion of Jews in Egypt, North Africa at that time.
Yes, there's a large community in Alexandria, an entire Jewish quarter in Alexandria, which might have been their destination. And then there is another Jewish community at Tel Beit Yehudia. So there are different places where Jews are living, and they could find a community of like-minded people to live with.
Yeah, no kidding. And they stayed there until such time as anybody who could threaten them had died. And then the Lord, again, directs them back, and they go all the way to Nazareth this time. Professor Claire Pfann is my guest, and we'll be continuing with her in future segments of this program of In His Footsteps with Day of Discovery. And you're going to want to take in every one. Friends, this is something worth telling your friends about. Make sure you know the time it's on air and you don't miss it, or, PVR it. Make sure you've got it. And we'll take a little break, and when I come back, I'll complete the program with a little close right after this.
And now we return to In His Footsteps with Jim Cantelon on Day of Discovery.
I talked about this incredible road to Bethlehem. They had the 2 different routes as options, but if they took the east side of the Jordan route to Jericho and then up to Jerusalem and Bethlehem through this Judean wilderness, boy, did they have a struggle. But even coming the other way through Samaria was very, very tenuous as well, more because of thieves and robbers than because of the weather. Something that occurs to me as I read the story and I think about this kind of arduous setting: faithfulness. Faithfulness. Both Joseph and Mary had these epiphanies, these amazing experiences with the Spirit of God, with actual angelic visitation, announcements and directions and instructions from heaven itself. I mean, this is the kind of thing that most of us would build a life on. But the fact is that you cannot build a life on any of these remarkable experiences. You still have to live your life day at a time, 24/7. And there's a lot about life that is drudgery, a lot about life that is not exciting, not thrilling, not spiritual. And in Joseph and Mary's case, the trudge, and it was a trudge, from Nazareth to Bethlehem was one of the finest indications of their faithfulness you'll ever see. Faithfulness essentially means in the Hebrew to put one foot in front of the other, to show up for work and not quit. Regardless of how you feel, regardless of the circumstances, you just stay true to your vision, stay true to what you've been called to do, and you do it. Faithfulness is the key. Faithfulness is the stuff that almost everything that's sustainable is built upon. And so the next time you feel like quitting, give your head a shake. Remember the long road to Bethlehem. I'm Jim Cantelon. Thanks for watching. See you again next time.
Join us again next week at this same time for another Day of Discovery. Day of Discovery is a video outreach of Our Daily Bread Ministries Canada and is supported by the free will gifts of friends like you who enjoy these programs. For more information about Our Daily Bread Ministries Canada, please visit us online at ourdailybread.ca.